Miss Special Guest, would you like to introduce yourself to the On Top listener?
Hi everyone, my name's Kate and I'm here today with Lucan Online.
Hey! And we all give a round of applause. Right, so
Thank you.
as I said a little bit earlier today, today's interview is a little bit different, which is great for me.
Woo!
So we normally have like loads of musical artists come through and sometimes people involved in the creative industry. But you not so much. We're here to talk about something a little bit more serious.
Mm-hmm.
And before we go into that, what is that contraption that you have in your hand?
So I'm sitting here in the On Top studio and I'm holding my insulin pump controller in my hand. Well observed.
And why do you have an insulin pump controller in your hand?
Because I'm an insulin pump wearer. That means I'm...
Wearer?
Yes, I wear one. So that means I'm insulin dependent. I have a autoimmune condition called type 1 diabetes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, right. So let's start off by saying that you were here to talk about diabetes, which is quite a serious thing.
Yes.
Now, I had this conversation only a few days ago because my mum, she's very, very, very paranoid about diabetes and stuff because my granddad had diabetes.
I hear you.
And he had his leg cut off because of diabetes. He lives in Jamaica, so the medical system's not probably as good as it is here. And he was older as well, so maybe the understanding was less. So she's very, very, very paranoid, and she literally refuses to have anything sweet. I don't know how much of an issue that is, but like everything that she has, she dilutes. If she has a juice, puts water in it, like dilutes everything. Whereas me, you see me with my 2 Lucozades, my M&Ms, my McCoys.
Well, I work in public health, Luke, and I'm just wondering how many vegetables you eat, since the snacks here are perhaps not the most healthy, but I'm not judging, it's all right.
No, it's fine, because you know how many vegetables I eat? None. I don't eat any vegetables at all. I eat corn and I eat potatoes. Those are my vegetables.
Okay.
Really bad, I know. I hate vegetables.
Vegetables are so good for you.
But they taste horrible.
I've basically been practically vegan since January of 2018, and I'm not dead yet. So
I would die.
I don't think you would.
I would die. I'd live off corn. Corn and a cob every single day. That would be my diet. So let's talk about the diabetes. So there's a mad fly in here, isn't there? When did you find out you had diabetes?
So my first week of university, the exact date was the 26th of September 1998. And I went to the university GP and they did a little finger prick test on my finger and established that my blood glucose reading was extremely high and sent me to the hospital where I was formally diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Really?
Yeah.
Why were they doing that?
So the kind of backstory is that I was working in Zimbabwe for earlier on in 1998. I had a huge amount of very odd symptoms. I was waking up about 6 or 7 times every night to urinate. I was drinking a ridiculous amount of fluid, like bottles and bottles of water. I was having cravings for sugar, eating packets of biscuits, all kinds of things that I hadn't normally done before, and had all of these symptoms. And then suddenly my friend found a book which was discussing loads of different issues around health and suddenly described this whole thing to me, which sounded exactly like my experience. And then she said, it's diabetes. And I said, oh, okay, my friend's mum has it, blah, blah, blah. I left Zimbabwe sometime in early September, came back to UK, went to the GP to have a blood test to be checked for diabetes. Essentially, I went to the GP and I said, these are my symptoms. I believe I have diabetes. And they said, well, it's not in your family. You don't seem to have lost weight. We think you have a urinary tract infection. So my first few weeks of university, I had antibiotics, which obviously is first week of uni is not really how you really want to start yourself because like antibiotics, no booze, all these kinds of things. So it took probably around 2 months longer than it needed to be for the diagnosis to happen, which potentially could have been quite dangerous. It could have even been fatal.
Really?
Most people with type 1 diabetes find out they have it because they actually collapse and end up in hospital where they'll do a whole range of different bloods and then we'll find that that's what they have.
That's mad.
So I'm basically lucky to be alive, to be fair.
So why were you in Zimbabwe to begin with?
I went to Zimbabwe to do some voluntary work and I was working with former street kids in a rural area, probably about 60 kilometers outside of the capital city, Harare. So I was working there, doing what you do when you're a young person, having an adventure, grabbing the travel bug, all of that kind of stuff, having a really great time. And then I was in a nightclub in Victoria Falls and I passed out on the bar and I'm a nightclubber. I dance around. I enjoy myself. Falling asleep in a nightclub is a bit unusual for me.
So hold on, did you put it down to alcohol?
At the time, I didn't know what was going on until my friend found that book.
Yeah. So, but when you went through the issue that you went through at the nightclub, did you think, oh, maybe you drank too much, or?
I literally had I didn't even really think about it. And I think actually as well that my brain wasn't working very well and wasn't working properly either. Yeah. Because ultimately when you have diabetes and it's undiagnosed, you have so much glucose in your blood because the body can't deal with the glucose in the food that you eat. Yeah. This is getting a bit complex, so stop me if I get confusing.
No, you're gone.
So you eat your normal food. Yeah. The body can't break it down because the body's not naturally producing insulin. The glucose then runs around your body in the blood. So your brain doesn't get the fuel it needs, number one. Try driving a car up a hill without fuel. You're not going to get far, right? Mm-hmm. And then in order for the body to then get rid of the glucose in the blood, because it clearly shouldn't be there, it tells you to get really thirsty so that you can wee it out. So you're then weeing out the glucose to get the glucose out of the blood. Right. But your brain still isn't getting the glucose energy. So your brain is then telling you need to be craving sugary foods to get the sugar back in the body. So it's a vicious cycle, right?
And is that also why you tend to need to drink a lot of water?
So when somebody has high blood glucose levels, when they already know they have diabetes and is maybe not so well controlled, or maybe they're having a bad day, they will drink quite a lot of fluid in order to then help flush out the glucose.
Oh, so it's deliberately to flush out the glucose. It's not a case that you're craving the water because you maybe urinated so many times that you're...
In terms of when you're undiagnosed, you'd be craving the drink because your body's trying to get rid of the glucose through urinating. Yeah, so to make you urinate, you need to drink. So it tells you to be thirsty, if that makes sense.
Okay. Wow. Okay, this is mad.
I'm trying to be like as basic as...
Yeah. I'm getting it.
And I'm not a scientist, so...
Yeah, I'm getting it.
Yeah.
So I was at one point, because I know... So you talk about like waking... So at one point in my life, I used to wake up early in the morning and I need to go pee. Now, I never used to do this. Yeah. And then at one point I decided every single morning I've got to wake up really, really early and go pee. Yeah. And I started getting really paranoid. And I thought, oh, do I have diabetes? And I always, during the middle of the night, I'll wake up and I'll go and get some biscuits or I'll have a drink. And my drinks are always a little bit sweeter than normal people's. So I really got paranoid and thought, I finally got diabetes. It's happened. Yeah. Then I went to the doctors and I had to have blood tests for various different reasons. And they said, no, you're fine, which I was happy about.
So that's very sensible. Number one, as a man, actually taking charge of your health as soon as you see a problem. I don't want to be too stereotypical, but actually a lot of the data shows that men will often seek medical support later down the line in terms of anything.
I didn't go there for the diabetes. I went there for another issue. Oh, okay. And then whilst I took the blood, I said...
But you still went there for something. It's a good sign. Well done.
Yeah, but it was a cancer scare, so it was a lot worse. So
okay.
Well, I don't say a lot worse, but it was like... And I'd put it off for years. So anyway, so once they took the blood, I said, while you're there with the blood, can you just run a diabetes check on me? So I didn't have it, which is a bit of a relief. I want to ask you about your Instagram name. So what's your Instagram name?
Oh, so...
Can I make a guess? Because it only occurred to me today when I was driving. Right, so your Instagram name is KPT1... D.
Yeah.
Right, okay, right. So
you had me whispering that to him.
Yeah, I know, right? But does it stand for? So it's KP, your name.
My initials, yeah.
And then type 1 diabetes.
Oh, well done. Oh.
I'm a genius.
Oh, can we give you a prize?
Yeah, if it's money.
I got 75p. How about that?
You know what?
You're not going to turn that down, you know.
I won't turn it down. So yeah, am I right?
Yes. Yeah, so when I joined Instagram, I think it was 2014, I was doing a lot more exercise than I had done in the past. I became a weightlifter and a runner to a kind of extreme effect. And when I joined Instagram, I was like, I need myself a name that's kind of reflective of stuff, and thought I would start to post quite a lot about diabetes as well, which I have done. And I've done quite a lot of advocacy work and promotion stuff. And heaps of my followers are also people who have type 1 diabetes, and heaps of my followers who are my friends have actually seen a whole new side of my daily experience, struggling, as we could say, with this condition, because I'm generally a happy-go-lucky person, but at the same time, you don't always know what's going on behind closed doors in someone's mind and someone's life, and all the kinds of things that I have to do that other people don't.
Okay. Because when I saw your name,
Yeah.
initially, I thought the PT parts. I thought, oh, maybe you're a personal trainer.
No, that's a good. Yeah, no, but no.
But
No.
I got there in the end. Okay.
Well, maybe if I look like a personal trainer, that's a compliment. So hey, thanks.
Well, there you go. See. So you've got. So I know that people do take insulin and they need to inject themselves and all the rest of it. So can you just explain to me what the purpose of that is? Like the reason why people, and then I know you've got to do it a few times a day.
Mm-hmm.
Is it dependent on how severe it is, how many times you've got to do it, or is it just?
The questions are so good. I'm so happy to be here. Thank you. I wonder if I can just clarify one thing first.
Go for it.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
So when you talked about what your mum was worried about,
yes,
and what you also were worried about to an extent,
yeah.
There is, when we tend to hear about the word diabetes,
Yeah.
we tend to be talking about type 2 diabetes.
Oh, I was going to go into, okay, right. So,
Oh,
yeah,
you are on the ball.
So explain the two types.
So type 2 diabetes affects around 4 million people in the UK.
Okay.
Type 1, the one that I have, we're the rarer kinds. There's about only 400,000 or so of us.
But I've come to learn the more severe.
Well, severe depends on your interpretation of the situation.
Okay.
So if you think about somebody with type 2, essentially what it is the body has stopped being able to work as well as it was before.
Yeah.
Your pancreas will still be producing insulin naturally by itself, but the body's ability to use the insulin properly, remember what we're talking about, the glucose running around the body, etc., the body will still be struggling to manage keeping the glucose in the blood low enough to be healthy. Whereas somebody with type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition where actually the islet cells in the pancreas have actually been damaged. My body does not produce any insulin at all naturally by itself.
Okay.
Hence the need for type 1s to either use injections to administer their insulin or to use what I do, which is the insulin pump therapy.
Okay. All right. So I've never heard of the pump before.
Have
right?
you not?
No,
until me?
Until you. So literally until about 10 minutes ago. So I knew about the injections. So let's take these slow. So type 2, would they be required to inject themselves or have a pump?
So people with type 2 diabetes, the majority of cases will be using medicines which are tablets, usually something called metformin, which naturally supports the body's ability to use the insulin already being produced in itself better. So it's a helper kind of thing. So yeah, and a person with type 2 diabetes tends to be given a huge amount of advice about weight loss, more exercise, more vegetables, Lucan. Healthier diet, less carbohydrates, but also in terms of carbohydrates,
I eat loads of rice.
The healthier carbohydrates. So if we're talking rice, black rice, brown rice, wild rice
What's
versus
black rice?
Black rice is lit. How do you not know this?
Oh, mate.
Sorry, I just dropped my phone. Excuse me.
It doesn't matter. It's only an iPhone.
Yeah, well, my blood glucose sensor runs off my iPhone, so we can't break it because that also keeps me alive.
Really?
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute.
That's well technical.
I know, that's why I need to carry the charger around because the battery flats out quite a lot.
Okay, right. So with the type 2,
yes.
they ingest like just tablets just to assist.
Yeah, so usually quite a lot of people with type 2 will be just asked to change their lifestyle.
Yeah.
So give up smoking, drink less, eat more veg, eat less carbs, eat better carbs, exercise more. Yeah. Anyone taking any medicine will usually be metformin tablets or something similar. Okay. Some people with type 2 may end up on insulin as well because perhaps they're struggling to keep everything going and maybe actually the body is... the way in which the body is using insulin or the insulin production is actually flawed enough to need extra support through artificial insulin, if that makes sense.
Okay.
I appreciate it's quite complicated, right?
It's very complicated.
I sound like I got a PhD in this.
You really sound like you know what you're talking about. Like
21 years. I've just turned 21 years for type 1.
Have you been doing a lot of research into it or you just picked this up along the way?
I'd say a mixture of both. Okay. So like what I was saying about when I joined Instagram, a lot of physical exercise was having a huge amount of issues with my blood glucose control. And so I took to the internet to find out more.
Okay, fine, understand. So type 1, so they're no longer going to be, can you develop from type 2 to type 1?
I don't think develop would be the right word. I would imagine there probably are some people who will have been misdiagnosed. Okay. This is an interesting question. It's quite topical, in fact. Historically...
Look at me.
Yeah, see? So maybe I'll forgive you about your lack of vegetables. Or maybe I'll just bring you some vegetables next time. If I'd have known I'd have cooked up something decent, proper seasoned up veg. Sweet potatoes are really good for you.
I hate sweet potatoes. I like normal potatoes.
What about pumpkin? Pumpkin's good for you.
Oh, that's horrible.
How do you not know? But if you flavour it up, it tastes great.
I have pumpkin in my soup. So Mum makes soup. She puts pumpkin in it, and it breaks down into
with
liquid.
spinners and all of this.
Right, yeah, there you go. So, but I can't eat a pumpkin.
Well, okay. Okay, we'll have that conversation offline, maybe. Sorry, where were we? What did you just ask me?
I asked you, can you develop from type 1 into type 2? Sorry, type 2 into type 1.
So historically, and some people may have heard of an organisation called JDRF, which is the only type 1 diabetes charity in the UK. Okay. And that's called Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. So in the past, type 1 was the one that kids got. You tended to be diagnosed in childhood, usually quite young, toddler age. And type 2 tended to be older adults as a result of lifestyle that perhaps wasn't as healthy. Later down the line, your body starts to not work as well. You know, imagine a car, it gets a bit old, stuff gets a bit rusty, that kind of a thing. But type 2 is happening more and more in kids, and people are linking this to obesity and the unhealthy diets that a lot of our children are facing, staying indoors, maybe not outdoors, playing around in the parks like we used to in the 80s. So going from one or the other, as in one becoming the other, I'm not sure if that's actually possible, but it may just be some people could have been misdiagnosed, if that makes sense.
But why is it not possible? So surely, for example, if you're type 2 and you're not taking your medication, surely the breakdown in your body will cause you to transition from type 2 to type 1.
So go back to
That's my logic.
I hear what you're saying, but go back to the original definitions. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune condition. That means the body misinterprets signals and starts attacking itself. So conditions like lupus, colitis, type 1 diabetes, these are very well-known autoimmune conditions. Whereas type 2 tends to be where the body just can no longer do its normal function as well. So I don't think it's scientifically impossible. And maybe there are science bods listening right now who are going to phone up in a second and be like, Kate, man, you're not right here. But in terms of how we normally look at them, we normally look at them as two very separate diseases. And
oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. So then when we think about from the perspective of people living with type 1, where's only 400,000 of us in the UK versus the 4 million people with type 2. Type 2 gets all of the airwaves on the media, in TV and movies. Things like that you hear, when you hear about diabetes, it's normally talking about type 2.
Okay, all right.
So there's often quite a lot of confusion as to the differences between.
Okay. Right, so with type 2...
Yes.
In order to control it, you ingest tablets however many times a day. I'm assuming, is it dependent on severity, how many times a day you take these tablets? Or
their dosage would be, I'm sure, yeah.
Okay. Right, so then with type 1, then you're now injecting the insulin.
Yeah.
Okay. Or you have a pump.
Yeah.
So to inject the insulin is very, very much what it says on the tin. You have a syringe and you inject the insulin.
Most people in the UK will not be using syringes. They'll be using I wish I'd brought my old stuff to show you, but a pen device, which is a much more friendly version of something to inject with. So I don't know how to use a syringe. I've never needed to use a syringe. I used a pen device to inject insulin.
So what's a pen device?
So basically, it looked like a kind of combination between a syringe and a pen. It kind of has a pen style to it, so it's got like a little handle on it, so you could like put it in your suit jacket, I'm guessing, but not that I'd ever done that.
Oh, what, the little clip bit?
Yeah, and little tiny needles, like really tiny needles that are like probably about, I don't know, maybe 2 mil deep.
Does it have like a needle in it? I'm assuming it must have a needle.
Yeah, so little tiny needles. Which you just take one off and put a next one on, and it's with the screw. Screwed on. Like, what do we say when we talk about lights? Not a bayonet, but a screw fitting.
Oh, screw, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
So that's what it looks like. I'm just showing Lucan a picture now.
Okay.
So in the sense, kind of, but it's smaller than that. So it's probably like.
It looks like a little torch.
It's like about as fat as a marker pen.
Okay.
But it's about this long, size of a ruler. Yeah, and a little dial on it to then dial up how many units of insulin to take.
So I'm assuming it comes with, then you put a cartridge inside it then?
Absolutely.
Like a fountain pen?
Yeah. So you put a cartridge, but it's like a medical cartridge.
Yeah, okay.
So you put a cartridge inside, which then has the insulin in there.
So every cartridge, is it just the right amount of dosage, or would it be a cartridge that could last for however many shots?
Depends on the person.
Okay.
So everybody's insulin needs are different. Depends on whether someone's sick, whether someone's eating a huge amount of food, whether someone's... so you basically take insulin for the food you eat. So it depends on what you're eating. Oh my gosh, how long do you have?
Really? Okay, so if I have a massive, so if I've been,
I go around every day with all of this in my head, and we're not even touching the sides yet. So can you see my mind?
All right, so this is going to be a longer conversation than I thought it was going to be. This is great. I love it. So if I've been diagnosed with diabetes, type 1 diabetes, I assumed that I would be told, okay, this is your dosage that you need to take per day. Maybe. Oh no. Let's say this is my. So let me go through what I.
Yes, tell me what you think.
You take, let's say, 10 milligrams 2 times a day, whatever it might be. But you're saying to me that the dosage depends on how much I've eaten. So
absolutely.
So that I might take 10 milligrams in the morning, but if I have a massive dinner, I might take 30 milligrams. I know.
Absolutely, exactly. Really? Yes, and I mentioned I've got a bit of a cold. Last week when I was really suffering, last weekend when I literally was asleep all day, yeah. I had the dose on my insulin pump up by about 40% more.
So how do you know how to change it?
You're just monitoring your blood glucose readings to then see what's going on.
Oh, and that's where your phone comes into play.
Yes.
Okay. So before we go, so you've got some reading things on your phone. Before we go into that, if you're not taking the insulin injection pen thing, you've got a pump, which I've never heard of.
So the insulin pump is, I'd say it's slightly new to the British.
If you could ever see the amount of gadgets that have been taken out.
Oh, you don't even know. This is not even the half of it. Look what it says on the bag, and I've got more than one bag. Sorry, Lucan, what was your question?
So talk to me about the pump.
So take it back to what I was saying about when I joined Instagram. I was doing quite a lot of physical exercise. Yeah. I was trying to monitor my blood glucose as best as I could, as I would always be, because I'm quite a vigilant person, but also to keep myself as healthy as possible. I want to be on top of my condition. Mm-hmm. I'm exercising a lot. That's making my blood glucose really erratic. And I started to look up on Instagram and find other women who were, I'm putting in inverted commas with my fingers now, mm-hmm. athletes. I mean, I might say I was an athlete. I don't know. I ran a marathon once. Don't ask me about that. But anyway, I lived
Did you
to tell the tale. Hell yeah, of course I completed it.
What was your time?
I don't know, 5 hours and 25 or something. But my first half was like 2 hours 20, which is for a first half is not bad.
Yeah, I couldn't make it, but go on.
And I got short legs. I got like 29-inch legs, and I ran 27.2 miles because you end up doing more in London than you would the actual route because it's so busy. I'm digressing.
Yes.
Apologies.
No, it's all right. It's good. I digress all the time. Go on.
Oh, that's cool. That's why we're getting along fine. I was joining Instagram to find out more about type 1 diabetes. I found lots of female athletes, ultramarathoners, for example, weightlifters who were using insulin pumps. And there are various different types. The one that I was really interested in is very small, and it's basically once it's stuck on the body, there's no tubing, there's no extra bits kind of hanging off you that could get in the way of stuff. Man's eyebrows just went to the ceiling, you know.
Whilst explaining this, Kate just lifted up her leg and showed me a lump in her jeans where she's got the pump that is actually attached to it. So is it stuck on? Is it like leached onto your leg?
Yeah, it's just stuck on.
And it stays there all day?
Yeah, it stays there for 3 days and then you change it again. I changed it this morning.
So when you have a shower?
Oh yeah, no, it's fine. Yeah, you can swim with it. But it only lasts 3 days and then you have to change it. I wanted to actually change the pump in front of you today, but this cold weather, I'm not wearing a miniskirt right now. It's just not, I'm not putting my trousers down, to be fair.
Holla! Wow. Now okay, right, that's thrown me a little bit. So
where do you actually want to go now with this conversation?
I don't know.
There's so much to talk about, right?
I'm really completely thrown. So I've not heard of any of this stuff before. So to me, diabetes is something that you don't really want to have. I'm a very, very naive person sometimes. Something you don't want to have. My granddad had his leg cut off. I don't want to get my leg cut off. I don't want diabetes. Very simple. Okay?
Absolutely, I hear you.
But there's so much to it.
And we're talking about type 1 as well, remember?
Type 1, yeah. So I didn't know about type 1 and type 2 until about a couple of months ago, maybe.
Okay.
So this pump thing, so rather than, is the pump because you need to inject, or you need more dosage, or is it just another
Good
version?
questions. Okay, so generally speaking, the way in which most people with type 1 in this country will treat their condition, because their pancreas is not producing insulin naturally, they will inject the insulin with their food anytime their blood glucose is too high. Yeah, remember we were saying if you eat a big meal.
I thought you meant you inject it into your food and then eat. Okay, fine. Okay, right.
No,
okay, right. I don't
know.
This
stuff smells disgusting. You would not want to drink this. Oh, no. So you would do an injection before you had your meal, but you'd be checking your blood glucose before to find out where you are.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like when you check your bank account. If you know you've got £20, you're only going to spend £20 or less than £20.
Right.
Technically speaking, when you check your blood glucose, it tells you how much insulin you need to take for the food you're about to eat and what other things you might need to consider throughout the day.
Yeah, okay.
So most people in this country will have insulin injections and will do little finger prick tests with a machine and to establish what their glucose is.
How often?
So you would inject the insulin with your food, and anytime you might need it where your glucose maybe was higher than you expected.
But how often would you do the fingerprint?
Finger prick. They advise something like between 5 and 10 times a day, but I tended to do it way more than that.
Really?
And you end up with really quite sore fingertips from like jabbing it with the...
So that's basically what, every hour almost? Of your
not so much every hour. They basically advise...
10 times a day, you're up for what? Let's say, 16 hours?
Well, so they would suggest before you eat, before you do exercise, maybe in the middle of exercise if it was a long bit of exercise. So like running the marathon, I did it about 5 times. I was actually doing this whilst I was running. Yeah.
Mad.
I'm a champ, innit?
That's crazy. So you're running around with your little diabetes bag.
Oh, no, seriously. I had all kinds of stuff around my waist. Yeah, you have to carry this thing around. My bag's mostly, I've got apples in there. I've got glucose tablets. I've got all of this stuff. Yeah, I can't go to the shops without carrying something with me.
Mad.
So in terms of then the insulin pump is a much more modern approach to administering insulin into the body artificially. Yeah. It's much more technological. It's you have a handheld device which you dial in some details to then give you insulin for your food, and any time that your glucose is higher than you would like. And it also gives a little trickle in the background constantly. So it's kind of dosing all the time, a bit more naturally. So that's a bit more like how your body works.
Okay, right, okay.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
So when I was looking at these athletes and I was seeing, they're all wearing these insulin pumps. What the hell is this? I started asking them questions. And they said to me the flexibility with the insulin pump for them and their lifestyle meant that they had much more control over their glucose.
So it's effectively a replacement for your pancreas working the way it should do?
Yes, exactly the same way as the injections are.
Yeah, but it's a constant thing.
Yeah, and the way in which it works is, for me, I find there's more work to do, but what I get out of the more work is better, if that makes sense.
Yeah, okay.
So the way that the NHS measures somebody with either type 1 or type 2 diabetes in terms of their health, they do a blood check and they check your average glucose over 3 months.
Okay.
And it's meant to be at a certain place or below for the healthiest you could ever be, which is then less likely to cause issues to your eyes, your kidneys, your cardiovascular system. What happened to my eyes?
No, what happened to your eyes? You said it was going to affect your eyes.
So people with diabetes can go blind. You can have kidney failure. You can have amputations, as you've already listed. Yeah. You can have cardiovascular disease, heart attacks, stroke.
Okay.
People with type 1 diabetes, if you stop taking insulin, you've got about 2 weeks and then you'll be dead.
Okay.
You did say this was a serious
conversation. That's mad. All right, so back to my initial question about the pump. I can't remember what it was.
You were asking about how does it work by comparison to the injection?
Yes.
So as I was saying, the thing around... So when I see my doctor and they do a normal blood draw from veins, they'll check what my glucose was for the last 3 months and they'll say, Kate, everything looks really good right now. Well done. My numbers for that test have been much, much, much better since I got the insulin pump and even better since I got the continuous glucose monitor.
Okay. Right. So, oh my gosh, I've got something on the other leg. Jesus
Basically,
Christ.
I'm a robot.
Yeah. Okay, so I was going to ask.
So what Lucan did with the flyer for today was to manage to crop off my legs on that carnival photo where you actually can see. I know I'm teasing, but in the original photo you can actually see on one leg there's an insulin pump, and on the other leg there's the glucose monitor. Yeah, click on the picture and then zoom in. See what I mean?
Yeah. Oh wow. Okay.
So
yeah.
That's the insulin pump is the purple one.
Is this carnival, by the way?
Yeah, no, that was a regular Saturday night out in Croydon. Yeah, that was Notting Hill Carnival this year.
Wow. Okay. That's mad.
Yes, it is rather.
So on your phone you've got the monitor.
Yes.
So am I assuming that it reads from one of the two pump thingies you got on your legs? One's the pump, and what's the other one?
Okay, so I'm just showing Luca now my pointing at my leg, even though
so on the right thigh
I'm wearing jeans, so you can't really see, but on the right thigh that is the insulin pump.
That's the pump,
which is quite small, right?
Okay, right, yeah.
And this is a little handheld device, which you push buttons on and you tell it what to do, and it will dose more insulin.
So Bluetooth or whatever.
Oh yes, I think it's Bluetooth. Yeah.
Okay, so that pump basically connects
to that
which is called
the machine. What? This is like I don't know what we call it, handheld device or some other long thing.
Some handheld device, not the phone. It's just a handheld device specifically for the pump.
If it was a phone, it would be a phone from the early 90s. Yes, it's like really proper brick size.
Yep.
But I've got a nice lime green case on it to just jazz it up.
Yeah, jazzy.
And then on the left leg, I've got another little thing stuck to me, another device.
What's the thing on the left side?
And that's called a CGM, or a continuous glucose monitor.
Okay.
That ultimately takes away the need for the finger prick test that reads the glucose.
So why do you have the finger prick test?
The finger prick test is the one to check where the glucose is. How is my glucose? Do I need to take more insulin?
You've got the CGM. What is it called?
So I've got the CGM now, which does the readings on the phone.
But you said it takes away the need for the finger prick test.
Yes.
So why do you have the finger prick test?
So I'm a on the side of caution type.
Okay.
And also because I use the devices, I'm required to keep, although today I didn't bring them, so don't tell my doctor, I don't have my injecting pens for the insulin, but I do have my old finger prick test meter and strips and little device, just in case.
Okay. This is a lot. But I've learned so much. What my biggest question is this. For example, if you...
So this is my glucose readings for the last 24 hours.
Okay, so...
You can see my glucose readings for the last 24 hours.
So is that good or bad? I don't know what I'm looking at here. So keep showing me her readings on her mobile phone.
So I've got an app on my mobile phone which talks to the CGM little device that's on my thigh. And this is showing a graph of my blood glucose readings, and they're meant to be in the grey area. How are they doing, Lucan?
There's a massive gap there, though.
That was when I had to change the sensor, and it takes 2 hours to calibrate.
Oh, okay, fine. Okay, I'll let you off. Okay, so you're doing...
That's a good question, though.
Majority of it, you're inside
is in the grey section, which is where I need to be.
I'm proud of you.
Thanks, man.
There are times where you're just outside, like you're going down into the pink or going up into the yellow.
Yes.
So what does that mean?
So going down into the pink, that basically, this is where your glucose is too low.
Going down into the pink. There's so many jokes there, but go on.
I wasn't going to say it. Excuse me, I didn't mean to cough like that. Low blood sugar is when you've perhaps taken too much insulin, you've not eaten enough food, you've done too much exercise, and what's happened is the amount of sugar in your blood, because you've taken the insulin to control the sugar in your blood, has gone low. Mm-hmm. And some people can get low blood sugar who don't have diabetes, and they'll feel lightheaded, a bit dizzy, a bit uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. But people with type 1 diabetes, because the body can't readjust that naturally like a regular person, you can die overnight. People die of hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar.
So how do you prevent that from happening?
When it goes low, you eat an apple, you drink some juice, you have glucose tablets, you have some 5 jelly babies, something like this, some high glucose, very sweet.
But how do you know not to have too much? How do you manage that?
That is ultimately the general issue with managing this condition, is the number of things that actually impact on your blood glucose readings are thousands. So like I said, when last weekend I was sick, I had more insulin because I needed more. Because my body was fighting my illness and wasn't able to manage the insulin I was giving it, because it can only do one thing at a time ultimately. stress can make your glucose go up. Exercise can make it go up or down. Being excited can make it go up or down. Weather can have an impact. You can absorb.
Being excited, really?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, like adrenaline. Adrenaline can make your sugar go up. Yeah,
okay.
Stress. Yeah. Good stress can make your blood glucose go up as well. Okay. There are lots of memes that type 1s have. One of them is a big picture of a huge encyclopedia, and it's like all of the things that can change, that can affect your blood glucose, volume 1. So a lot of times medics will say, "Oh, Kate, how are you doing? Are you in control?" And I always look at them and say, the condition I have is actually ultimately almost uncontrollable. Yeah. And they'll say things like, "Oh, what happens here and what happens there?" And I'll say, "Well, on Monday and Tuesday, I did exactly the same thing. I got up at the same time. I went to the same job. I ate the same food at the same time. I dosed the same insulin, and I had totally different readings both days, because sometimes those things happen." Yeah. And you can't see inside your body to know you might get a cold in 2 days to then know right now you're going to need more insulin for the next 3 days. I mean, there's too much information here, really, right?
There's a lot. I'm really struggling now. I was doing well to begin with. I'm just now overloaded. But it's brilliant. My main question that I want to end with, because we're going to go into the ads in literally about 5 minutes.
Yes.
And we've been speaking for literally just under 40 minutes now.
I know, and you haven't actually played a song, and you've left me rambling.
Which is fine, but let's do it because it's interesting, and I think it's very important that people hear this. If me and you were out, for example, and then you were to collapse, this is a good question. What would I have to do to make sure that you get back up again, or see the next day?
So the best thing to do in that instance, if somebody is unconscious, as in they've literally collapsed, and if it's me, I'm not someone who takes drugs, but I would probably be drinking. But if I was drinking, you would know that I was if we were out. Is if I'm conscious, is to get some sugary things into my body. So give me like actual Coke, juice, those sorts of things, and sit with me and put me in a quiet place and just check that I'm okay. Get me to check my readings on my phone, if I've got the finger prick machine. If
we don't have none of that stuff?
Just stick with me and just see what happens. But also... Obviously. Say again?
Call the ambulance, obviously.
If somebody's unconscious, yes, that's a sensible thing to do.
If you are conscious, I'd still call the ambulance.
Well, if you wanted to. But you're being sensible.
Would I be panicking?
But if I've collapsed, then that would be the most sensible thing to do. Okay, so I'm a mass band player at Carnival, and I have unfortunately left Carnival in costume twice in an ambulance. Really? The last time was last year, and that was because I got low blood sugar and I was treating it the normal way, but because I'd had alcohol, because I'd been out on my feet for, it's like 7 odd miles, right? In the boiling heat, wearing very little clothing, dancing around, enjoying myself. My body couldn't deal with keeping hold of the juice, and I threw it up everywhere. And at that point, the only way to keep your sugar up, if you can't swallow something, is IV glucose. So I had to get IV glucose on the side of the road, which was, I guess, in some ways, somewhat embarrassing, right? But
so where'd you get this IV glucose from?
Paramedics, and then they took me to the hospital.
So how long did it take them to get to you?
Well, I was with a friend who was extremely assertive, and she yelled at a lot of police and demanded things and said, "You don't want her to die," and this, that, and the other. Okay.
Right, so if we were out, for example, and you collapsed, but you were conscious...
basically would never want to be in with me anywhere now. I can see you looking like, oh my God, don't want to be near this woman.
Got that right. But no, if you were to be out and you collapsed, the best thing to do would be to give you something sugary, something sweet.
Yes.
And stay with you.
Most likely it would be, your collapse would be down to low sugar. So alcohol can make your sugar go up, but it can also make it go down very quickly. And if you're dancing, you could be then expending more energy than you expect to.
Sit you down, recovery position.
Yeah, if you know the recovery position, great.
Okay. If you were to collapse and be unconscious.
Collapse and unconscious, 999. Call that ambulance immediately. And be super assertive that you tell bouncers, security staff, this person has diabetes. This person is not just some whatless drunk fool, just leave them on the road. Because that's kind of dangerous. But people like me tend to wear pieces of jewelry which will then say that we have diabetes. So I'm wearing a little bracelet now that says diabetes on insulin on it.
Oh, okay. Where'd you get that from?
I got this from a company called Medic Alert. And it lists some of my other health conditions on there as well. I actually have many. We don't have time for that right now, but yeah.
One last question. I noticed on one of your pictures that you had the blue circles. We spoke about this.
Yeah, the blue circles.
Right, so talk to me about these blue circles. So for those who don't know, Kate's got a tattoo of blue circles. How many blue circles?
I've got 20 blue circles on my, I guess it's kind of upper chest, just
above the right boobie.
Yeah, basically, but just before the shoulders, kind of there. And it's a kind of rough drawing of circles, so they're not like absolutely technically accurate.
Is that deliberate?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the international symbol for diabetes, it's Diabetes Awareness Month, we're in November, is a blue circle. And it's not so dissimilar to a lot of the sort of international symbols for health campaigns. And it's a blue circle, and it's a great piece of representation. But for me, when I had my 20th anniversary, which was last September, I wanted a tattoo to celebrate this, because, you have to be celebrating these things.
Okay.
And being positive, so I got 20 circles.
So you haven't got one circle every single year?
No.
You just got one tattoo of 20?
One, yeah.
Okay. So next year, will you add another circle?
Well, this year I didn't, so no. Okay, I'm 21 now.
Okay, right.
Well, my disease is 21.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not 21, but yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you very much. I hope
that's okay.
Helpful to everyone else listening. Is there anything that I didn't ask that people should be aware of when it comes to diabetes before we go into the ads?
I think probably the thing to think about in terms of diabetes, I think particularly because of type 2 being the one that's the most prevalent, is, and I don't want to sound like I'm being judgmental on you, Lucan, but generally speaking, prevention for all kinds of long-term conditions, and also like trying to remain healthy, also dementia prevention, all of this stuff actually comes back to all of the same principles. So no matter who we are, the more veg we eat, the more exercise we do.
I do a lot of exercise.
Okay, that's good.
I eat apples.
Okay, apples, that's good. They've got fibre in and other things. But so essentially in terms of maintaining how your health and for long life and preventing long-term conditions, but also supporting you if you do have a long-term condition, the best things to do are eating a healthy, balanced diet, exercising, drinking lots of fluids, and enjoying your life too. So balancing that out. Don't be not having birthday cake because you think that's really bad, and don't be blaming yourself if you had too much to drink one day or had a huge curry or something. But you want to balance this sort of stuff out, because ultimately, food is fuel for us and actually keeps our bodies going. But at the same time, there's so many things around food, socially, culturally, and pleasure-wise, that are really important for us for health and well-being as well.
I don't drink water either. But what if I was to increase my fruit intake, that I have much more fruit, and to compensate for the fact that I don't eat vegetables?
Well, that's definitely going to be a good thing.
Okay.
But there's ways of hiding veg in your food too.
Yeah, but I know it's there.
Well, but, it's good for you.
Kate, thank you very much. Got to wrap it up there. Thank you so much.